It is another week where we have a special guest episode. I am bringing on Glendy Yeung, and I am excited to introduce you to her. She works in more of an energy field, so this might be a little unique for some of you listening to me, but if you've listened to me for a long time, you understand how compelled I am to share energetics within our bodies surrounding us and how it truly impacts our health and well-being. So stick around. I'm going to introduce Glendy now because I'm excited to let her share what she has for you today. So welcome, Glendy. I am so excited you're here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Lovely to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I am so excited for this. Now, I know I didn't do much of an intro, so would you please introduce yourself?
I am a energy healer. I'm a sound practitioner. It just happened so that I surrounded by some of the crystal ball since earlier that it was set up today. And I'm also a spiritual mentor. Having gone through my own spiritual journey, at first I was like, wow, have I done all this seek as a seeker, try and find truth, right? The last 20 something years, I'm like, no, I didn't realizing that actually probably my journey started since I was 6 years old. If I finally looking back at all the breadcrumbs that when we look back at life, right? Like all the pieces of things that kind of drop into your lap, put into a bigger picture. And that's a lot of times is how we find our missions or purpose, or like why things happen the way they are, right? Then we can just piece things together. So yeah, I have my own personal, very slow and painful route. I'm sure a lot of us like can relate to that, especially for those who's been searching. And of course, lately there's a lot of people just like things are coming out fast. They kind of activate it right away, right? With like, whoa, like fire hose, what is really happening in this world, especially when what we deal with day to day that is so different than what the inner knowing. So yeah, so my journey ties in with a lot of different energy healing modality. I have my background actually is in I study neuroscience. In the laboratory, I have paper in my name, so I'm like hardcore science, and I work in the cybersecurity technology field in corporate, Fortune 100 companies, consulting for over 17 years. So I have that side of the house. I have my understanding of that. And while I was navigating all that, what is supporting my inner life? It's actually all these other things, a lot of different spiritual modalities, a lot of spiritual communities. And even for me, it's like kind of wading through the waters and then how it relates to me and bringing back a lot of what I didn't even know necessarily past reconnections from past, perhaps not even this life, right? And still putting the pieces together. But the pictures become clear and clear. And a lot of what I do right now and what I focus on, it's not even necessary. I would even sometimes call it spiritual. It's like a high dimensional science. And I enjoy supporting empaths, other healers, sensitive souls, other coaches, and wellness people who are also having that inner calling to support others who are sensitive to energy, but also not necessarily have the know-how or were taught how to properly manage what this, like you said, what is this energy thing is about.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people got drained, people got running around crazy in their head and not realizing a lot of those things are not theirs. So I enjoy sharing how to some of the ways that you can learn, get deeper into understanding how you work. And especially on the energetic level, because it ties heavily to how you think and feel and then express in your physical health.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's so much. Every time we talk, I'm like, yes, yes, yes. Yeah, there and I know there's a lot of people listening who can connect with that.
Yeah. And I mean, after we live for so long, right, we're seeing our own patterns. And then those who recognizing, and you got to ask, and for those who are seeking solutions. And then you got to ask, like, wait, why is it not working? And then you may be seeing it working on somebody else. Why is it not working for you? Or something works, but then doesn't work all the way. And then what else is there? And then, or you learn a modality And then you think this is like, okay, this is beyond and all. I'm going to help people. I'm going to help myself. And then all of a sudden you got pointed the door and just like, there's this other thing over there. Like, wait a minute, how is it even relate? And then you kind of dive into this new area of understanding of like, wait, there's a lot more. So I think with energy, I think science finally by now acknowledging everything is energy, everything vibrates. And with that, your whole body, your thoughts, your emotions, what you set on, they all some kind of moving. And with that, and it brings up a deeper investigation, even your own personal inquiry. If you're curious, like, wait, what else is there that you carry that we didn't even know it's with our normal senses that can't detect? It's moving, it's actually causing things to show up in us. It's interrelating, it's constantly like affecting. Think of the subconscious, like the river, the ocean, deep ocean of subconscious. What is there? What is underneath it? So yeah, and a lot of work that I do on a healing basis or on teaching other people basis is it's to pick up all those pieces and and for our own personal evolution. I think that's one person recently asked me like, yeah, why are we doing all this? And for me, it's really about like evolving who we are, not just as this body, this name, this current time, but knowing the much longer history of past, present, future. And then from there, making the choices that you want to make right now.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, there's a lot that when I talk with clients, I'll ask questions about how they're feeling, how they felt when things
Yeah.
happened 10, 20, 30 years ago, because
Yeah.
it may not seem like it has anything to do with today. It happened, I healed or didn't heal, whatever
Mhm.
the case may be. It doesn't have anything to do with today. When in reality, it can have a lot to do with it. Everything that we go through, this life, past lives, this whole series, it brings you to today. And whether you're a new soul or an old soul, everything has an impact.
Yeah, so beautifully said. And if we're sometimes when we all we need to do is just pay attention to what bugs you right now. Whether it's like, you have this, whatever pain in your shoulder or whatever, whoever is bugging you, like, bothering you, or whoever is showing up literally making demands, and put the pieces together and you actually can do quite a lot with all those things.
Yes, absolutely. I used to have a spot right here. And if
Yeah.
if you hit it randomly, it was as though someone tapped me with a needle real quick.
Hmm.
It would send reverberations down my collarbone.
Wow. Hmm.
I've never had an injury to my collarbone,
Hmm.
nothing on this shoulder at all. So I don't know where it came from. And overcoming a lot of life stressors, it
Mhm.
disappeared.
Mm,
So
mhm.
there's
Yeah,
physical manifestations for these things
yeah,
that
absolutely. And for a lot of people I work with, I mean, there's so many different layers of it, and then you kind of attack it from different angles. But yeah, a lot of the times, like we have things that actually restricting us, like energetically, like like we can find like a sword on somebody's back, and it's like what? And then that pain that you described that similarly could be a thing like that, and you just didn't know. It just and most of the time, especially as women, right? How we're so good at ignoring until our body just like really like, hey, pay attention. Something need to be sorted out.
if your body
Uh,
is whispering, you're listening. If your body
yeah,
is screaming at you, you have not been listening.
yeah. And so much about all this work, it's about listening.
Mhm.
It's about
Absolutely.
reconnecting with our physical body, listening to like all of it. And
Mm.
it's interesting that how when when I look at all the energy healing modality that I dove into over the years, and I didn't realize, and I wasn't I didn't do it on purpose. I just kind of go after whatever's interesting, and whatever shows up, and everything it's uh, energy based, and including working with sound.
Yeah.
And there's a bit even the bigger drive, I would think, even um, going as I in on my journey on working with people, working myself, there's a lot more it's not just go do, right? There's still that always that do, whether it's you're, doing a breath work, or you're doing a ice bath, or whatever the do thing is. Even is holistic, right? Even you go beyond the pills now, but it's the opposite. There's
Right.
so much more about the listening, and
Yeah.
we're not taught to listen, and it's uncomfortable to listen, and we can't hear. We got frustrated, and we don't know what we're listening. And meanwhile, like, certain parts of body, I scream and scream. And I think in one of the retreat that I had, one of the instructions from the teacher was like, you have, when you listen, you need to honor that thing that shows up, because the more that you don't listen, then you can't hear it. And I was like, oh no, I was like so afraid, right? Um, we don't have that fortitude to sometimes, even when we heard, to trust that and do whatever that may be.
Right. Right. It's something that I hear a lot is people, because by the time a client gets to me,
Mhm.
by the time
Yeah.
they find me, they've reached the end of the rope. They're done
Mm,
with practitioners. They're done
yeah.
with research. They're just going to do what they feel in their gut is best, which is probably what they should have done from the get go. But to get to
Exactly.
the point where you're at your breaking point to
Yeah.
start that process
Yeah.
it's heart-wrenching to watch. And I feel a lot of their energies when that happens. And
Mm,
my work is virtual, but as you know,
yeah. Doesn't
that
matter.
doesn't stop the communication.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it definitely that's definitely that in my mind as you're talking, it's resonating and faces are flying through my head.
Mm. Yeah, and we're only taught earlier, sooner, right? And how to listen, and how to trust that, and what it translate to, and how we can work with your practitioners. And
Absolutely.
also, as practitioners, also, and I think that's also like a self challenge. Is like, how can I listen to more in that interaction,
Mhm.
right? In like, the way that you feel and sense and notice what your clients' needs are, like beyond what the stories that they're telling, beyond the sound coming out of their mouth. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny, people they'll ask me along the way, and business networking, they always ask you, what's your special power? It's like, well, how do I explain that somehow a question pops up or something pops up, and
Hmm.
if I mention it to the person I'm talking to, it leads them down the right path,
Yeah.
get whatever answer they're looking for. And I don't know how it happens. It just happens.
Hmm.
It just is.
Yeah.
And so this discussion, you had mentioned something in our back and forth. You called it dirt, energetic dirt.
Yes. Mm.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I saw that and I was like, oh, I got to ask her about that.
There's probably I would probably use more extreme words than dirt, but yeah, the way that we, like, we wash our face, most of us. I'm lazy sometimes. I don't. And we do facials, right, to like suck out all the things, so that we can, and skin doesn't have those impurities, so that our skin can have all the right blood flow, and just so we can glow. I mean, that we can see it right in our face. And same thing with the way that we interact with people, because we are way more than just this physical body between your shoulders, between your ears, right? Like, our energy bodies extends, and all our thoughts, our emotions, our history, and the good and the bad, the anxiety, the happiness, they're all like badges, or they're like wave patterns, and that's all in our field. And for those who can sense it, or some people, like you said, right, you sense it, even though you may not see it, and then other people may see it in whatever fashion, because even those people who can sense it and see it oftentimes see it differently. But we carry all that with us as we interact with the next person, also have those same thing. So that's when the energy kind of exchange and interact. Sometimes things hopped over. And I think of, like, when we your kids, go to school, you know with a runny nose, and then the next thing you know, everybody, the whole class, it's like running around, like screaming, crying, and then the mom they need to feed them, you know, whatever medicines to so that they can feel better. And yeah, it's energetically that can happen as well, and that does happen often. And for those who are sensitive to energy, for those who are practitioners who are literally diving deep into a client's history or a client's, the emotions and their thoughts, like especially really intense ones, all the things that open up in the box, that in invisible box that is in between, even right over the airwaves or in person. And especially if we are not, if we have our own resonance to those things, which oftentimes your clients, for those who are practitioners, you probably noticed that people come to you because, either you heal from it, right? There's certain, or that's you still suffering from it, but you a few steps ahead, right? You have your experience to share. So it's very easy for things to get stuck in us if we're not clean up. And so that's one level of the energetic dirt that we can kind of pick up wherever we go, wherever we interact. You might not have even spoken to a word to the person. You might, and for some people, you can go to certain places. The location itself has bad energy, for lack of a better word, has a lot of history with human history, with land history, with like a planetary history that some people can pick up. And that's why some people chase after those like sacred sites, right? It's the opposite reason, right? It's that you want to feel that in the vortex, you want to feel like, uplifting or other dimensional consciousness or whatever that may be, versus the opposite can be true. Like you can step into a cemetery or places that has really, really strong energy that actually causes the opposite of feeling good. You might be dizzy. Some people might be yeah, dizzy is a good word, like headaches or just like down or shut down. So for those who are sensitive, or you may not even notice you're sensitive. I think that is oftentimes an issue because people not necessarily have the labels of empaths, introverts, but yet, they just assuming, oh, they ate something, they didn't have coffee, right? Or they ate something funny, or they didn't sleep right. And meanwhile, they're feeling funny, they are down, their head is swimming in all kinds of thoughts and emotions, and they just assume it's just normal and assume it's theirs. When there's absolutely something absolutely something to do about it, and actually imperative to do something about it. Yeah. And especially for practitioners, that because you carry what you have to the next client as well, and then you pick up more, or you pass it around. So that's why, we kind of understand the idea of hospital is supposed to be really pristine, like I'm talking about just traditional sense, right? You need to wear the gloves, you have all these protocols, right? The cleanliness. Yeah, that absolutely apply to practitioners. To me, applies to, and especially to every person, but it's more so for those who sense it and feel it, like an empaths or sensitives. And for a lot of people who I spoke to, they know they're sensitive, but they don't have those label. And I give them a few very simple things to do. And then they'll come back like, wow, I don't know. I have not feel like myself or this much of myself, my own energy for like 40 years.
Yeah.
And that's when there's a different way. And just like the way that you work with your clients, it's just like, wait a minute, you kind of open the new door. Like there is a different way.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting to hear you say that as well, because for me, the whole reason I ended up in this field is because it seemed like every step of the way I was clearing my dirt.
Mm-hmm.
And I was opening up more and more of myself. And I think it took longer than it needed to, just because I didn't understand.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the work that I did could have been done much sooner, but like I didn't understand what I was looking for. And once I realized afterwards, oh my gosh. And I had the pleasure of actually working alongside energy healers and practitioners. And one of the questions I actually wanted to make sure to ask you was for people at home who are listening to this who have never worked with anybody,
Mhm.
what would you say the first steps to starting to really look and see how to take that step to clear your energy to create a healthier, I call it an energetic being. I don't know
Yeah,
that that's the right word, but I call it an energetic being for
I
themselves.
like that. And I think so by now, actually, on my journey, I really, really advocate people do their own work. And of course, you get help. Some, here and there, you get help. I get help when I need it. And also, different people have different access. So this is another interesting thing about a lot of people are like, well, what is this energy healing? And it's like, and it's you don't know who to go to, and it's not like right, everybody have completely different access, and by now I have a much better understanding of like if I can see these kind of words, they kind of sign these kinds of things that they say, what their lineage is and what they study, then I'd be like, okay, is this align with me, does it not align with me, and maybe this and then you also assess it from an energetic level. But without even any of that, so number one, I would really suggest that uh, really learning about yourself, learning about the body. And a lot of times people use meditation as a way to get quiet, but meditations is actually a great way to actually learn about your body and like an internal contemplation. It's much more important to activate each person's own intuition so that you can make better choices. You actually like listen to your, you know, liver, angry liver complaining, right? Or your kidneys or your lungs that haven't fully expressing grief, whatever it may be. So I one of the very first homework I usually give my clients or anybody that actually have noticed that energetic dirt that they are kind of under needs some kind of cleanup. One of the things to do is very first thing to do is taking a lot of salt bath. No, not the bath bomb thing, like in the fancy smelling nice, not Epsom salt. That's for muscle, but kitchen salt, like 1 to 2 pounds, a
Okay.
lot. How about a lot? And if you have an ocean in your backyard, go swim for like a lot, and with the intention while you're in there, actually with the intentions to for all the stuff that you're carrying come out and dissolve some of the quartz, that connections that you made on a daily basis when you talk to people, other people talk to you, you think of others, and it also dissolves a lot of that. So the hot water, I use essential oils like frankincense and lavender. So I found quite a few empaths that I work with that when they started doing that, it's a lot. They are like all of a sudden be able to focus a lot more because they're not carrying other people's thoughts and emotions. And from there, then you can make a better choice of what could be next. Yeah.
That's very interesting. I never connected the dots before. Our last house had the whole backyard was the pool. Like you walk out the back door and
Mhm.
there's the hot tub in the pool.
Mm.
And it was a saltwater pool,
Yeah.
which is part of the reason we bought the pool. The house just kind of came with it, put it that way. And I used to go in there on a daily basis and I could feel when I did not.
Yeah.
Time,
Yeah.
I worked full time.
Hmm.
And that it's a lot to handle when you're working as a practitioner, especially in
Yeah.
this field, because you carry that. And there's some things you just can't bubble your way away.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, you got it to help without recognizing. And I have a friend of mine who is an acupuncturist. So not just an acupuncturist, what do you think come out of the needle on the other side, right?
Right.
And I know quite a few acupuncturists actually kind of get burnt out in 10 year around 10 years mark.
Yeah.
And they don't necessarily know why. They just assume it's just like scheduled and seeing clients, but not necessarily associated with what is really happening energetically. And this particular friend of mine, like she just always wanted to go surfing, wanted to move to the beach, next to the beach. And actually, when she did that, things like she was able to much better managing, like because she wanted to quit. And I
Yeah.
have people who literally quit. because they couldn't, it's just too much, and they couldn't really explain what that meant. So yeah, that's these, and then the ocean, the water also have, especially in this case in nature, has negative ions. So it's also, I mean, it's not just one thing, right? So this is another thing I want to point out is that, yeah, this is one tool. It depends on who and what you are, what you're dealing with, and on how deep that we have to go, that, you have to find your own thing. So that's why it's so important to really start with what's really right here. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really crucial. And one of the things that I talk with my clients about is food wise, if you're craving and you've already hit neutral, so we're not talking about,
Yeah.
either hitting that point of you need to do something or you're in a health crisis. But once you hit neutral, the cravings that you have from your body are things that are telling you what it needs. Your body's saying, we need these things. It's just hiding it in vision.
Yeah.
When you crave dark chocolate, it's magnesium. So I know, wanting to live by the beach. Those are life cravings. It's taking you to your happy place.
Going back to listening, right?
Yeah. Whenever life throws curveballs, I have to hit an ocean, and
There you go.
it takes me a bit longer now because we're in Dallas than it used to get to the ocean. But that's the very first place I go the minute I possibly can.
Yeah.
Taking all of it in.
And yes, and I think for those who are on their healing journey, would be curious about different types of modality, and there's nothing better than to experience it yourself.
Absolutely.
And it's very, sound, for example, I can't explain the sensations and feelings unless I can describe it, but it wouldn't make sense. And I have people who are not familiar with meditations and any, more the wellness modality. And until that they experience it, they'll be like, oh, that's how that feels. And I think all of us need more of that recognition.
Yeah.
Yeah. And because our body is constantly search of resonance, vibrations from out externally, whether it's through, like you see, magnesium through a piece of chocolate, or there's a sound, or a location that have that resonance, have the vibrations. So yeah, it's really about, listening and then taking us on like a lighthearted journey about like picking these things up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So you actually have a course that I think aligns right here. Is it Everyday Energy?
Yeah, it is called Everyday Energy Hygiene for the Sensitive Soul.
I
considered like the early entry level, or maybe a little bit more than entry level, of some of the things that we can do, some of the things that we notice, because like you said, most people don't have any concept of energy or what kind of things is affecting us. And that in that course, I kind of break down a lot of the things in different buckets of the things that we can't see, but definitely are there that affect us, and how we can prepare in general, like before in a situation, during, right? Like a practitioner, like during, or even in a meeting, right?
Yeah.
And after. How do you clean up? How do you clean up faster? Because there's always cleanup no matter what. And it's all about cleanup. And I describe a lot of my work, energetic self-defense. But it's a lot of it, it's instead of like thinking of sword and like thinking of fighting, but a lot of it's really cleaning up your own thing, because the best defense is really not having this resonance with those things that come the way that just like happily stuck on you, because you still have old stuff that you don't even know that relate to it.
Right. Yeah. It's the equivalent of working with somebody or trying to work with somebody who is facing the same issues you are in that same moment. And you can be there as a support, but can you truly help? Because you don't have the space. You don't
Yeah.
have the bucket for that.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it's really the more cleanup we do, the more that and it is in the cleanup that we're remembering who we are, the things, the pieces that we don't even um, register because we're too busy in the other stories, and stuck in now whatever traumatic experience, painful physically or just right the everyday experience, and even also especially on what it's externally that we have to supposedly do to be good citizens and feel good about ourselves and as mothers, daughters, whatever those frameworks that we find ourselves in. So yeah, it's the work just like the work that you do, right? It's not just it touches on so many levels. Yes, it's physical, but yes, it ties into your feelings and emotions. It ties in spiritual. It ties into your ancestral. It ties into your relationships. It ties into your relationship with money and professionally, how you show up. And then at the end of the day, it's like tying all back, like who you really are. And I think that's a in service of our own evolution. That's a worthwhile journey.
I agree. I get a lot of comments, especially on this podcast,
Mm-hmm.
saying, "You're a nutritionist. Why do you talk about mindset and energy
Yeah.
so much?"
Yeah,
And
it's all
you know,
tied in.
yeah, it's where you start. Your diet's what you fuel with, but it's
Mhm.
not the only thing you fuel your body with. So it's part of the reason I was very excited to kind of delve into this topic toward
Mhm.
the end of the year, mostly because this is the time when we start getting distracted,
Mm.
and getting overwhelmed, and you don't take the time to really sit and deal with whatever's hit you that day. And then it just builds up, and then you hit January, and now it's new
Mhm.
year, new you.
Right. Yeah.
But do you really need to get to that point?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no, totally. And every new breath, every new day, it's a new and you can make a new choice. And it
exactly.
takes yeah, it takes will. It takes like of greater love, if you will. And I think for a lot of people, I think even from the beginning, like when I first started my journey was like, well, I just need to do exercise because I recognizing I have to do exercise, and that's why I took yoga classes because I can't do anything else, or I don't feel like I could do anything else. And sometimes what get us, it's like the superficial things, or I mean, it is not superficial, but it's a little bit like you get the carrots at the stake, right?
Yep. Yep. Shiny objects.
Yeah, the tiny objects that get you, and then I'm like, wow, there's actually much more to the story, and yeah, and the more that we're willing to face it, the more gold you kind of discover. And with nutritions, it's very interesting because there's a lot more history to different food than we recognize. And one food for this person is right for this person is not for the next person. It's way beyond what's in blood tests or biochemistry. That is and one thing that especially as part of the energy work is I've been clearing food and water and anything put in my mouth for the last better part of the last 10, 15 years. It just happened so that I came across uh, disciplines and modalities that really very OCD in a good way, very emphasize on that. Because, think about it. I mean, there are food that you have, I'm sure here, each person have the food that you taste that taste like you just know and feel that love, that nutritions, and then there are food that you have taste that like tastes like junky. Like I have tasted food a couple years ago in a food chain type of situation, and because there's nothing else I could eat, it literally tastes like death. It's guacamole and lettuce and some rice, and that's the only thing I could get. But it was like there's nothing. It tastes like air. It tastes like and versus maybe dinner at grandma's house or vegetables from your garden, right? It's And I think that's the choices that we begin to consciously make, um, not outside of convenience or glamour or whatnot, but like, wait a minute, if there's something that really feeds you, and how do you, it's more important than just, all the other things that shiny object that you pull our
Right.
attention.
Right. There's something to it when it comes from your own kitchen or somebody's
Yeah.
homemade kitchen. It's not mass produced.
Hmm. Yeah.
And there's a story that, I mean, it's been around for years, but it talks about, the grandmother, and the grandmother passed around this spice, and you can never look inside of it. And finally, I think the granddaughter looks inside of it, and grandma has to put it in every single meal.
Uh-huh.
And all that's inside is a little piece of paper that says a touch of love.
Oh,
And I mention it to a lot of my clients
yeah.
who swear up and down they could never cook a thing.
Yeah.
And you don't have to cook nowadays. There are ways to get around it, and there's ways that you don't have to cook, and you're not resorted to eating mass produced food.
Hmm.
Because as your body heals, you start feeling
Hmm.
the energy in your food.
Yeah.
And the same burger that's in a mass produced restaurant versus a burger at home, if it's made with the exact
Hmm.
same spices,
Yeah.
it's going to feel much different.
Yeah, it's definitely, because our capacity. There are people that who can do energy work, it doesn't work on them, or well, there are many reasons for that. But like one of the reasons is like they don't necessarily have the physical, the other ingredients that needed to sustain it.
Right.
Right? They can feel good for 2 seconds or days or weeks, but they may not have the other components to continue to sustain it. And that's definitely part of really working with food in a way, or working with anything in a way that your body has a greater capacity to process, to pull in the nutrients and sustain that nutrients. And whether it's, we're talking about energetics and emotions or thoughts, right? Like sometimes we need how to feel happy. People depressed, maybe like, okay, how do what is keeping them happy, right? Not just a new pair of shoes, how long does it last,
Right.
right? Or the vacation, how long does it last, right? That is that nutrients that we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I actually, like with food, I would energetically clear it and restructure it, actually, even to match my energy system, if you will. And because think about it, like all the food, think of all the foods, where did it come from? The lands, all the people that touches it, and all the people that cooks it, all the people that it's the transportation that come through. Yeah. So all those things that comes into play, it's a lot more, we talk about, it's a lot more complex than that. And it doesn't have to be, because you can resolve it in seconds. So
Absolutely.
if you have the consciousness and awareness for it. So that's where the everyday hygiene and everyday, have incorporating that's what it is about. Yeah.
I always tell people, and one of the recommendations for anything that I do has always been to take 5 minutes a day to recenter yourself, to ground yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And it
Yeah.
doesn't matter what you do. My husband plays screaming music at the top of his lungs.
Mm-hmm.
But the man is, a former drummer from Austin. So he's not former, he still plays, but he's no longer in bands. And, his way of meditating and taking that time to come back to his center,
Mm-hmm.
much different than mine.
Right. Yes.
Much different than mine. Each one of us has a way of doing so. Um, and when I talk to people, that's my top recommendation. It's interesting being a witness to their journey
Mm-hmm.
in finding out what that actually means for them.
Mm. I love that. Yeah, it's just really you have to customize it. It's really recognizing what works for you. Try different things, and then and alchemize it. Yeah.
Oh, I like it. I like that phrase.
Mm-hmm.
That is awesome. Okay, so tell me one last thing.
Yes.
What number one recommendation would you have for a beginner? Someone that is hearing this for the first time
Mm-hmm.
and it's resonating with them, but they don't know where to go from here.
Mm. What I like to usually advocate for people, beginner, again, the whole point is being in this awakening journey. It's to getting to recognize, to listen. So notice what shows up, the topic that they're curious about. It doesn't mean that that's, oh my God, that's like the end all be all at all, but that's a stepping stone. So find out, do an internet search or find your local centers and go to people or whoever is speaking that have that resonant, that curious, that pique that interest. See what else they have available and follow their courses, workshops, and just kind of taste test. Yeah. And I think that it's really about following your curiosity, because that it's going to open the doors for you. And I have clients who I taught them, a set of modalities, ways to do things, to dowsing, to use pendulum, to make choices and decisions, and to do healing. And then when they're done, I'm like, well, look at what else is, now that this thing's open for you now, like what else it's drawing your attention inside, both like, oh, wait a minute, it's time to deal with this, because there may be something that comes up like, okay, it's a guilt thing, or it's a grief thing, or it's right, or it's a relationship that in the past it didn't resolve, that you kind of, okay, it's knocking on your door, and that's internal calling. And then the externally, what things that draws your curiosity, and try them, because setting that intention, combining those two directions, right, inner and outer, you're going to meet people that kind of give you the next step, or you're going to be recognizing what your next step would be. Yeah,
absolutely. Do you agree with the concept that once you take one step forward toward your healing, that the next steps seem to just appear?
yeah, it's always about that. It's your resonance of the yes, right? The resonance of listening to your body, of like, yes, you are looking for that pattern, you are working on that patterns, and when that energetic shift change, and then you call in different things. I don't know how this works magically, but yes, it kind of does, right? And then when you're stuck, then also notice that when you are stuck, then also, instead of just moping, right, also take a step back, like, whoa, something is not right, so that you can get the help that you need. And there are times that you definitely need people to kind of help unlock stuff, and bouncing down, being bouncing board, sounding board, and dive into the little things that you can pull at. It's not nothing. So this is another thing, because anything that we kind of come across is going to have 80% truth, 20% distortion, if you're lucky. And that's everything. Maybe even the opposite direction, 20% truth, 80% distortion. But nonetheless, it is up to us to actually feel our own resonance to fish out what we need. Yeah. And I think that's I found it a lot more healthy way to relate all those things, because at the end of the day, it's about you. It's about you recognizing you. So the more that you can have that power to empower yourself to be that, allow your energy system to be that, like, yep, to pick and choose and alchemize all of that, the more that you'll be able to do your own work, if you will. Whether it's a mindset work, whether emotional work, when you're recognizing there's something bubble up, like, whoa, you can do it differently. So it doesn't have to be energy healing, but it's also ties in with a lot of what we consider mindset potentially, right? And other ways of relating to a problem, whatever that problem may be. Yeah.
I love that. I like your explanation. I was hoping that that's where it would take you. But you never know, because each and every one of us has such a different perspective on this.
Yeah.
And that's the joy of the energy that makes us us.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's us. It's our bubble.
Yeah. And it's funny because there's a lot of things in the wellness world, or just in general, there's a lot of things that I would no longer do, that I was like, yep, it's not for me. And it doesn't mean it's not for the person. I may speak about it like, whoa, why is it so-called not good? but also totally recognizing that, for another person, for, the deeper, high dimensional reason, sometimes we know we can speak about it or not, that is exactly what they needed for them to get to the next step.
Yep.
Yeah. So we have to kind of honor all that.
Absolutely. It's having those unique directions,
Yeah.
that I mean, I always come back to biochemical individuality.
Mhm. Yeah, however, whatever
I
words you wanna toss at it, right?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
we're all individuals. We have unique DNA for a reason.
Mhm.
It's just
Yeah,
one of many markers.
yeah, yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Is there anything additional that we didn't touch on that you wanted to mention?
Um, I think we cover really beautifully on a lot of topics and a different levels too, right? And I would invite those who listen to our conversations really take a look in your life, what you are working on right now, and see if you can identify your own little doorway. Maybe if those are who meditation practice, start asking your body in your meditation, whether it's talking to your an organ or feelings or experiment. Yeah. And it is indeed developing that listening,
Mm,
that you get your own ally. Because ultimately all the teachers is within. So we want to get practice on it, even though it doesn't feel like in the beginning we may not like, okay, we're not getting answered and get frustrated. But
right.
yeah, but it's how we good at it, how we get good at it is by practicing. So you might be surprised. You might be and a lot of people that I work with really surprised what came out. Yeah.
Yeah, just by working on your own,
Yeah.
solo. There's a
Yeah.
lot. Our bodies are phenomenal.
Our
They
body's phenomenal. Yeah. It's really it's in the physical intelligence. And of course, reach out to practitioners that you have affinity with and trust and that kind of dive deeper, help think of them as support, right? To help you dive deeper into that intuitive uh physical intelligence. Yeah, definitely.
absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being here. I'm excited to get this out, and all of your information will be in the show notes. That way, if anybody would like to reach out, especially if they want to take advantage of your
Everyday high energy hygiene for the sensitive soul. I probably need to pick a shorter name. And
no,
it's a digital course, but I will answer personal questions over additions to videos. So if there's anything, and I'm also find that people might not recognize situation happen in their life. Things happen that's kind of spooky or something, and they just kind of put it past them, but they don't actually correlate to what we're talking about. That is the reason why. So they actually have a lot more relate to it than they would think. And it's more about, yeah, learning about how to deal with it. Yeah.
I love that. I love that people need this. They do.
Yeah.
So many of you go into of that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, sorry, my brain completely brain fart.
Mm. Yeah. And I think going forward, it's going to be a lot more important because of all the
Mm,
shift and changes that's happening right now. A lot of people around us, it's unfortunately getting less stable,
mm,
and practitioners dealing with a lot more, and there's a lot of reasons for that. So I think for those who are sensitive, and especially for those empathic, that you kind of have a job to actually transmute this energy. So to learn about protections, to learn about how to do it in a way, and how to restore it, do it faster, that's going to help you a lot, and also help those around you that you support, whether it's families or clients, uh, a
agree,
lot better.
agree. Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much. I really enjoyed having you here. Thank you for listening, and I will chat with you guys next week. Cheers. Okay, that's always my signal when I edit to like,
Yeah. I love the M&M mugs. And the color is fantastic.
yeah, I have a whole bunch of different ones. When you and I talked the first time, I was actually using my New York one.
Ah,
Didn't even think about it, and then later I was like, "Oh, yeah, okay," because
how funny is that? Yeah.
I grab them, and it's
Right.
I grab them when the boys get up. I'm drinking.
Mhm.
I usually leave the bedroom with my lemon water.
Yeah.
Uh, if it's not next to me, I won't. I just mornings are not my thing,
Yeah.
and I just grab whatever's in the fridge. And today it was M&M.
There you go.